Great to see you here again. My name is Luc de Kuster, founder of the Kuster Academy, and we're continuing with our lectures related to the principles of stakeholders and communication management. In this video, I talk about the importance and the identification of stakeholders. But before we continue, don't forget to click on the subscribe button, click on the bell button, and whenever we have a new video, YouTube will inform you about it. Thank you, and let's continue with the next part of this video. We can ask the questions or the question why stakeholders are important. Now, when we look at who the stakeholders are, those are in fact people and organizations that have an interest in the project and they want to know what is happening. So when you're building a house, the stakeholder would be, first of all, the customer who wants to know what the house is going to look like, and you have to communicate with them. You may have to communicate with the neighbors because you're building in the neighborhood and things like that. Stakeholders were not always considered as being quite important, and when you forget stakeholders, it's something that should not be done. It depends on who the stakeholder is, what the power is, and so on. Now, we expect that when we look at stakeholders, that these stakeholders will have a positive effect from the project. But on the other hand, we may also see that the people may fear a negative impact. Imagine a project where you are merging two companies. Those two companies, and I was part of a company like that, people are used to what the old company was doing, what they've been doing for years. And suddenly you have to migrate. You will be bought or you are being bought by another company with other rules and other expectations. Now we've seen that in certain cases, and I saw a movie recently about Boeing when it was bought by another airline company and how it creates a lot of problems with the people. The people are used to be working for a company and they have some expectations. So they want in Boeing, the real people, when I saw the movie, they were really proud of what Boeing was doing. And then they're bought by another company, and the strategies are completely different. The people don't like it. The atmosphere of the management and the attitude is completely different. So you have to take into account all these things. Are there positive impacts? Are there negative impacts? You, the project manager, you have to communicate with the stakeholders. You have to tell them what's going to happen in the next weeks, in the following months, what is the progress of the project. And you also have to identify how the project is going to impact the different stakeholders. Some stakeholders may have a different expectation. They'll be impacted by the project in a different way. So you really have to understand who these stakeholders are, because if the people are not happy, then you can run into a lot of troubles. Now, we also have to take into account that some stakeholders may have the power to influence the outcome of the project. When we were talking in the migration or the selling of one department of IBM to AT&T, the parties were there, like, for example, the unions. The unions were looking after all the advantages that the other people, the people coming from IBM, had, and how it will be transferred to the new company, to AT&T, to the new stakeholders. All these things are very important to verify, to take into account. Now, the first thing that we have to do is identifying the stakeholders. It's a very important process, like I showed you. It's the first process, one of the first processes in the project management process, yes. And it's about finding all the relevant stakeholders. Who are the people who are, in fact, important for your project? What are their interests? How are they involved? What network do they have? Because there may be different networks existing between the stakeholders. What is the influence of that stakeholder and the potential impact that the stakeholder can have on the project outcomes and success? All these things we have to identify. We have to know things about the people. I remember working in the military construction agency, and one of the things I was doing was building airports or doing work for the Air Force. Every time with my birthday, my boss from Air Force, the Air Force general who was responsible for these things, called me on my birthday. He was in fact managing the stakeholders. I was an important stakeholder because I was managing these projects. And basically by keeping me on the loop, keeping me happy, it was for him a way to create success with this project. So we have to understand who our stakeholders are having birthdays. We don't have to have an FBI file on them. We don't have to know all the things they did bad, but we have to understand how we can deal in the best way with those stakeholders. There are a lot of things that we have to take into account. Now, the process may even start before the beginning of the charter or the creation of the charter. Now, it's important that we have that charter, but let's say we can already understand when there are some sales that we are doing, even before a contract is signed, we may already understand who are the stakeholders that will be involved in the project. And I'm sure that the company that's dealing with those projects and, for example, implementing new solutions in their company, they already evaluate how these things are being done. Salespeople do this. They find what they call fox hunting. It's a course I followed. How to find out who are the people that have a very important impact. You have to understand, in that case, it was finding the fox, the person that would internally, in fact, support you and give you important information about who to deal with, what is the general idea, feeling in the company. What happens if you forget a stakeholder? Did you ever forget your wife's birthday? Your mother-in-law's birthday? Don't forget about the husband. Don't forget about the father-in-law. But the wife and the husband, I'm sure you will get hell. The same thing when you forget a stakeholder. You have to find the people. You have to try to find everybody, even when they're not important, but you have to evaluate what could be their effect on the project. Understanding who the stakeholders are will provide you with leverage because you know that you informed all of them, and even a stakeholder who has not really the power to do something may become a real problem when you forget that stakeholder. Now, you also have to see that the stakeholders may change over the life cycle of the project, and you have to keep a stakeholder register and classification of stakeholders. That provides information about the power and interest of the stakeholders related to the project. Now, people can change, the functions will remain, but you can have more or less stakeholders being added during the project. Like I said, forgetting a stakeholder can become a liability. You have to be careful with this. Anyway, it's better to have one stakeholder too much than one too little. Be careful with the stakeholders that you have forgotten and be sure that you don't forget anybody. So that was it. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button, click on the bell button, and every time we have a new video, YouTube will inform you about it. Thank you very much and bye-bye.